Hey, bossbadi here. Thanks for joining me as we continue where we left off in episode 2, which you should watch before this one. I'm just saying. We are going to pick out the motherboard in this episode, so it's going to be an exciting one. A motherboard is paired with the CPU, or central processing unit. That means that if you have an Intel CPU, then you will need to buy an Intel motherboard. But that doesn't mean you have to buy Intel branded motherboards. An Intel motherboard is like any other, but the CPU socket type is designed to fit an Intel CPU. That means AMD chips cannot fit into Intel boards, and Intel chips cannot fit into AMD boards. If you don't know what a CPU socket looks like, it's just a slot in the middle of the motherboard with a bunch of tiny pins sticking out. Those pins will fit into the bottom of your CPU. The motherboard. You got to have a motherboard in your computer. It's how you will access USB flash drives and hard disks. It is how you connect to the outside world using the internet, of course. If you don't have internet, well then, that's too bad. The motherboard is where you will plug in a graphics card and then plug in an HDMI cable to the graphics card and insert the other end of the cable into your monitor so you can see everything. Whew! Since the motherboard is dealing with all sorts of things, wouldn't it be a shame to lack a quality board? So, it's research time. I will fill my brain with all the knowledge I can find about motherboards. That means watching videos, surfing the web, and even looking at my motherboard, which is the MSI MEG Z490ACE in case you were wondering. Before you go out and buy a motherboard, it would always be a good idea to first understand where everything goes on a motherboard. That way, you'll have expectations when looking for motherboards you want. For example, if you plan on using 4 RAM or random access memory sticks, then you would look for motherboards that have at least 4 RAM slots. That can save you valuable time in the long run. What do I mean by this? Let's say you want to become a professional gamer, but your disgusting laptop is holding you back. You want to be streaming and recording at the same time, but the RAM isn't enough. So then you turn to your PC, which has even less RAM than your laptop. You go out and buy some more RAM, but there isn't enough space on your motherboard. I think you get the point here. Buy a motherboard that is both versatile and durable, ready to last for years to come. My motherboard has 4 RAM slots, and each stick is 16 gigabytes. So that's a total of 64 gigabytes of RAM I have there. If I ever wanted to upgrade each stick to 32 gigabytes, for a total of 128 gigabytes, I could do that. A satisfactory motherboard that will suit most people's needs has at least 2 RAM slots for sufficient memory, 1 PCIe slot for the graphics card, and enough ports to attach hard drives and accessories. For me, it's a minimum of 2 USB 3 ports. Some good motherboard manufacturers to look for are MSI, ASUS, and Gigabyte. If you search for motherboard on Amazon, these are practically the only brands you'll find. To be honest, when I look at a motherboard, I don't care about the brand. What I care about is first if the chipset of the motherboard matches my CPU, of course. Other than that, I look at the side panel for the various ports, such as PS2s and USB 3.0s and audio jacks. You know what I mean. I also look at the number of RAM, PCIe, and M.2 slots. The more the better, you know the drill here. One more thing that is quite important when it comes to motherboards is the size. More formally denoted as the form factor, the size of your motherboard can have many effects on your budget and gaming experience. Motherboards come in 3 main sizes, which include the ATX, Micro ATX, and Mini ITX. Yes, Mini is smaller than Micro. Most gamers settle for the common ATX boards because they have more expansion slots and ports. But there are both advantages and disadvantages when buying any form factor. As you may already know, ATX motherboards do offer the most space for plugs and slots. Serious gamers often use more than one graphics card, and to fit that all onto a single board, it's going to have to be an ATX or larger. Micro ATX is 2.4 inches shorter, which means less room for expansion slots, and the Mini ITX is ideal for a tiny portable PC, but you'll usually have room for only one add-in card, such as a graphics card, and barely any room for storage and RAM. So whichever size you want doesn't matter to me, as long as it will help you fulfill your dreams of becoming a professional gamer one day. I personally like the ATX motherboards because most computer cases can support it, and it's not that big either. There's plenty of room for expansion cards and hard drives. The motherboard I use is the MEG Z490ACE, manufactured by MSI. It has room for 3 graphics cards and 4 memory sticks. The side panel is littered with USB 3s and all sorts of other ports. That might be why it costs $400. But how can we maintain a good budget with all these requirements for a motherboard? Just like I said in the previous episode, which you should watch if you haven't already, I'm just saying. You always want to seize the opportunity for a discount if you can. Check websites like Slick Deals and DLC. Use the provided APIs from large companies to build a deal sniping program. Make a friend monitor a motherboard on Amazon 24/7 until it's on sale. I think you get the point here. So what have you learned in this episode? Nothing. In that case, let me summarize what you should have learned in 4 lines. 1. Make sure to choose the motherboard that matches your CPU chipset. 2. Know your requirements before buying a motherboard, like the number of RAM slots, etc. 3. The motherboard is not something to overlook. Spend a good amount of your budget here. 4. bossbadi's channel produces great content, and that's why you should like and subscribe if you haven't already. Later.